The courtroom fell silent as Zara Johnson stood at the witness stand, her hands trembling but her gaze unwavering. Officer Kruger sat with a smug expression beside his attorney, confident in his power. The defendant claims she has White House credentials. Can she prove this outlandish assertion? The judge demanded. Suddenly, Zara pulled out her presidential sealed ID badge. Gasps erupted as cameras flashed frantically. Kruger's face transformed from arrogant certainty to shocked horror as he realized his catastrophic mistake. The judge banged her gavel repeatedly as chaos consumed the room, but Zara only locked eyes with Kruger, silently communicating that this was merely the beginning of his downfall. Could a single moment of racial profiling unravel an entire system of injustice? If you believe in the power of standing up against discrimination, hit that like button and subscribe, because tomorrow's story about how one brave teenager changed American policing forever is something you absolutely can't miss. Zara Johnson had always been exceptional. Growing up in Southside Chicago, she defied every stereotype and obstacle placed in her path. By 17, she had achieved what many considered impossible, a perfect SAT score that opened doors to the nation's most elite institutions. Harvard had offered her early decision acceptance with a full scholarship, recognizing the brilliant mind behind her application essays about educational inequality and community empowerment. But even more impressive was her selection for the prestigious White House internship on the Future Leaders Initiative. Only 20 high school students nationwide received this honor, and Zara was the youngest. Under the direct mentorship of Dr. Maya Lancaster, special advisor to the president, she would help shape national youth policy while still a teenager herself. Despite her academic excellence, Zara's daily life remained punctuated by microaggressions. Store security following her through aisles, teachers expressing surprise at her articulate presentations, classmates asking to touch her hair. Each incident reminded her that in many eyes, her skin color would always speak louder than her achievements. "Remember, baby," her mother had said before she left for Washington, "those marble buildings may look different than our neighborhood, but the people inside still have the same biases. Keep your head high, your voice strong, but your guard up." Her mother's words echoed from experience. 20 years as a public defender had shown her how differently the system treated black Americans. Zara's first weeks at the White House exceeded even her own expectations. Her policy proposal for addressing urban education disparities through technology access programs impressed senior staff, earning her additional responsibilities. Dr. Lancaster, herself a pioneering black woman in government, recognized Zara's potential immediately. "The president needs concrete data on racial disparities in educational outcomes," Dr. Lancaster told Zara one Friday afternoon. "I want you to lead the research team. We present next Thursday." The assignment was both an honor and a tremendous responsibility. Zara decided she needed a proper professional outfit for the presentation, something that would help people see beyond her age and race to the substance of her work. That Saturday morning, she headed to Westfield Mall to find the perfect blazer, unaware that this routine shopping trip would change the trajectory of her life. The moment Zara entered the upscale clothing boutique at Westfield Mall, she noticed the sideways glances from sales associates. Despite her neat appearance and the White House lanyard partially visible in her purse, their suspicious eyes followed her movements between the racks of designer clothes. Through the store's security cameras, Officer Richard Kruger watched with particular interest, his attention immediately drawn to the young black girl browsing items well beyond what he assumed she could afford. Zara carefully selected a navy blazer with subtle gold buttons, professional yet age-appropriate for her White House presentation. She examined the stitching closely, checking the size tag before trying it on. As she tucked her phone into her pocket to free her hands, a sales associate made a subtle gesture toward the security office where Kruger sat monitoring the feeds. Without hesitation, Kruger rose from his chair and headed to the sales floor. His approach was aggressive, purposeful, his hand already resting on his holster as he intercepted Zara between clothing racks. "Excuse me, miss. I need to see what you just put in your pocket," he demanded loudly, causing nearby shoppers to turn and stare. My phone? Zara replied calmly, immediately reaching to show him. I haven't taken anything, officer. Kruger grabbed her wrist before she could retrieve her phone. Sure you haven't. We saw you on camera. Just cooperate, and this won't get worse. For you. Please let go of my arm, Zara said, her voice steady despite her rising fear. I'm happy to empty my pockets, but you're hurting me. Stop resisting, Kruger snapped, tightening his grip and pulling her arm behind her back in one swift motion. This is what happens when you people think you can steal whatever you want. The public humiliation intensified as other shoppers gathered to watch. Zara attempted to reach for her White House ID in her purse. I work at the White House. Here's my ID. Kruger laughed dismissively. Right. And I'm the president's personal bodyguard. That's obviously fake. Now you're adding fraud to your charges. He handcuffed her with unnecessary force, causing her to stumble forward. We've got a known shoplifter here, folks. Nothing to see. During the struggle, Zara's phone fell from her pocket, the screen shattering against the marble floor. Her only means of calling for help now lay broken, as Kruger began marching her toward the exit, her protests falling on deaf ears. Have you ever been judged unfairly based solely on your appearance? Comment number 1 if you believe what's happening to Zara is pure racial profiling, or number 2 if you think the officer might have legitimate reasons for his actions. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe in equal justice for everyone, regardless of skin color. Will Zara be able to prove her identity before things escalate further, or is this just the beginning of a nightmare that will test every ounce of her resilience? Stay tuned as we uncover what happens when prejudice wears a badge. The mall security office was cramped and cold, with harsh fluorescent lighting that cast unflattering shadows across the faces of both Zara and Officer Kruger. Despite her complete compliance since the handcuffing, Kruger had not removed the restraints, which were now cutting painfully into her wrists. The security cameras in each corner of the room recorded everything, though Zara would later discover that this footage would mysteriously malfunction during key moments. I have rights, Zara stated firmly, channeling knowledge from her mother's legal career. You can't search my belongings without consent or a warrant. Kruger ignored her, dumping the contents of her purse onto the metal table. Her wallet, keys, notebooks, and makeup scattered across the surface. When he found her laptop decorated with White House stickers and official seals, he scoffed loudly. You really committed to this fake White House story, didn't you? Got yourself some nice stickers from a gift shop? He flipped through her notebook, which contained meeting notes with official White House letterhead. Pretty elaborate scheme. Where'd you steal these from? I didn't steal anything, Zara insisted, maintaining remarkable composure despite her racing heart. If you'd just call the White House Office of Internships and ask for Dr. Lancaster, listen to these creative lies, Kruger interrupted, addressing the mall security guard who stood uncomfortably in the corner. They always have some fantastic story. Next she'll tell us she's friends with the First Lady. The mall security guard shifted his weight, clearly uneasy with the situation, but unwilling to challenge a police officer. Maybe we should just check. Her ID? He suggested quietly. Kruger shot him a silencing glare before returning his attention to Zara. I'm calling for transport to the precinct. We'll sort this out downtown. He reached for his radio, requesting backup and a squad car. Zara's mind raced between her mother's long-standing advice, stay calm, don't antagonize police, survive the encounter, and her growing certainty that her rights were being deliberately violated. She knew she should have checked in with the White House security office hours ago, part of the strict protocol for all interns. By now someone would be wondering about her absence. Officer, please, she tried again, you're making a serious mistake. I haven't stolen anything, and I really do work at the White House. This is going to become a much bigger problem if you don't verify my identity now. Kruger leaned in close, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Keep talking, and I might just find something in your record. Young girl like you, from Chicago. I'm sure there's something there. Maybe some gang affiliations, drug possession. How clean is your family? The implied threat sent ice through Zara's veins. As the daughter of a public defender, she knew exactly how easily police could find evidence where none existed. Another officer arrived, younger than Kruger, who glanced at Zara with a flicker of recognition. "This the shoplifter?" "Yeah," Kruger replied. "Claims she works at the White House. Can you believe that?" The younger officer studied Zara more carefully. "She does look familiar." "Maybe we should process her downtown," Kruger interrupted firmly. "She had merchandise concealed. Mall security saw it on camera." The younger officer hesitated, but ultimately deferred to his senior colleague. Within minutes, Zara found herself being photographed against a height chart on the wall, her name entered into a system that would forever mark her as having been detained, guilty or not. The police precinct bustled with activity as Zara was led through its double doors, her handcuffs still firmly in place despite the reddening marks they left on her wrists. The stark fluorescent lighting accentuated the institutional coldness of the space. Metal desks, computers displaying mugshots, and officers moving about with casual indifference to her presence. Unlike the TV shows where innocent people quickly cleared up misunderstandings, Zara was processed like any other. "Suspect. Name?" barked the desk sergeant, a heavy-set man who barely looked up from his computer. "Zara Johnson. I need to call my supervisor at the White House. I'm an intern with the Future Leaders Initiative under Dr. Maya Lancaster." The sergeant snorted, exchanging a knowing look with Kruger. "Sure you are." "Age?" 17. "I'm a minor, and legally. You need to contact my mother, or allow me to do so." This information seemed to give the sergeant momentary pause, but after Kruger leaned in and whispered something, the sergeant shrugged and continued processing her paperwork as if she'd said, "Nothing at all." "Take her to holding while we sort this out," he ordered, still not meeting Zara's eyes. Despite laws requiring minors to be held separately, Zara found herself placed in a holding cell with several adult women, a drug offender, a suspected prostitute, and a visibly intoxicated woman who kept shouting about government conspiracies. The message was clear. The rules that protected others didn't apply to her. From her uncomfortable metal bench, Zara could overhear officers chatting and laughing near the coffee machine just outside the holding area. Another hood rat claiming, "Connections," one officer chuckled. "Last week it was some kid saying his uncle worked for the mayor." "This one's creative, though," another replied. "White House intern, that's a new one." "Kruger always brings in the best entertainment," a third added. Their casual racism stung even through Zara's growing numbness. 2 hours passed. 3, 4. No phone call, no contact with her mother, no acknowledgement of her increasingly desperate requests to verify her identity. As evening approached, a female officer with the name Chen on her badge came to check on the holding cells. Unlike the others, she actually looked at Zara, noticing her school uniform beneath her jacket and her composed demeanor amid the chaos of the cell. "How long have you been here?" Officer Chen asked quietly. "Since around noon," Zara replied. "I've been asking to make my phone call for hours." Chen frowned. "You're entitled to a call. Let me see what I can do." 20 minutes later, Chen returned and escorted Zara to a phone mounted on a wall near the processing desk. But by now, it was after 6 p.m. White House administrative offices had closed for the day. Zara's call to Dr. Lancaster went straight to voicemail. "Dr. Lancaster, this is Zara Johnson. I've been detained at..." She glanced at Officer Chen for confirmation. "5th Precinct," Chen supplied. "5th Precinct on false shoplifting charges. They wouldn't let me call until now. Please help." Her voice finally cracked on the last word. As Chen was leading her back to the holding cell, they passed a room where Kruger was showing the booking officer security footage. Zara caught a glimpse of the screen and froze. The footage had been edited to show her slipping something into her pocket, something that had never happened. "That's not what happened," she protested. "That footage has been tampered with." The booking officer looked uncomfortable but shrugged. "Not my department to judge evidence, just processing the paperwork." Chen's expression remained neutral, but her eyes showed concern. Later, when bringing Zara a cup of water, she whispered, "Officer Kruger has had complaints before, all from minority detainees, all dismissed." As night fell, Zara remained in custody, now facing potential charges of theft and resisting arrest, based on Kruger's falsified report. Through the small window in the holding area, she could see darkness settling over the city, the same city where just that morning she had been working on policies to improve young lives across America. Have you ever felt powerless in a situation where the system was working against you? Comment number 1 if you think Zara should keep fighting against this injustice, or number 2 if you believe she should just cooperate to get out faster. If you're outraged by the treatment Zara is experiencing, hit that subscribe button to support stories that expose the harsh realities many face. Will anyone come looking for Zara before it's too late? Can she prove her identity against a system that refuses to listen? And what about Officer Chen? Could she be the ally Zara desperately needs? Dr. Maya Lancaster checked her watch for the third time in 15 minutes. The preliminary meeting for tomorrow's presidential briefing was set to begin in 5 minutes, and Zara Johnson, normally punctual to a fault, was nowhere to be found. She had missed her required security check-in 4 hours ago and her afternoon data analysis session with the research team. Has anyone heard from Zara today? Dr. Lancaster asked the assembled staff members. Heads shook around the conference table. She was supposed to send me the education disparity statistics by 3, replied an analyst. I texted her, but no response. Dr. Lancaster's concern deepened. This behavior was completely out of character for the brilliant intern she had personally selected. White House internships operated under strict security protocols. Any unexplained absence required immediate action. I'm activating the security protocol, she announced, pulling out her phone to contact the White House security office. Something isn't right. Miles away in Chicago, Vanessa Johnson was preparing dinner when her phone rang with an unfamiliar Washington, D.C. number. Mrs. Johnson, this is White House security. We're calling regarding your daughter, Zara Johnson. Her kitchen knife clattered to the counter. What's happened? Is she all right? We were hoping you might know her whereabouts. She missed required check-ins today and an important meeting. This is highly unusual based on her record. I haven't heard from her since our morning text, Vanessa replied, panic rising in her voice. She mentioned shopping for a blazer at some mall. As twin investigations launched, Dr. Lancaster mobilizing White House resources and Vanessa Johnson beginning her frantic calls to D.C. hospitals, Zara sat in the precinct holding cell, now informed she would appear before a judge the following morning. The charges are shoplifting and resisting arrest, the processing officer told her mechanically. You'll be appointed a public defender if you can't afford an attorney. Meanwhile, Officer Kruger sat at his desk, meticulously crafting his incident report. The document described a belligerent teen who had threatened him, attempted to flee, and had been caught with merchandise concealed in her jacket. Every word was a fabrication, but typed with the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences for such actions before. In a quiet corner of the precinct, Officer Chen discreetly ran Zara's name through the federal database. Her eyes widened at the results. A high-level security clearance for the White House internship program appeared on the screen. There was truth to the girl's claims. Chen glanced toward Kruger's desk, uncertainty crossing her face as she considered the implications. Back in Chicago, Vanessa Johnson's calls to D.C. hospitals yielded nothing. In desperation, she called the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm trying to locate my daughter, she explained to the dispatcher. She's missing in your city. Has it been 24 hours, ma'am? Came the indifferent response. No, but she's a White House intern who missed mandatory security checks. That's significant. File a report tomorrow if she's still missing, the dispatcher replied before disconnecting. Unknown to both Vanessa and Dr. Lancaster, at the Westfield Mall, the security chief, a drinking buddy of Officer Kruger, was marking the original unedited security footage for deletion as part of routine maintenance. Night deepened, and Zara huddled on the hard bench of the holding cell. Some detainees had been released, but new ones had arrived, including a woman with untreated mental illness who paced and muttered threats. Another detainee had recognized Zara's vulnerability and had made several intimidating comments about what happened to snitches and privileged girls in lockup. Even some officers had made pointed comments while passing the cell, suggesting that attitude adjustments happened to people who claimed special treatment. For the first time since her detention began, Zara allowed herself a moment of pure fear. She was alone in a system designed to break people exactly like her. Dr. Lancaster paced her office, the morning sun doing nothing to relieve her growing anxiety. Nearly 18 hours had passed since anyone had heard from Zara. After a sleepless night of calls and coordination, she made a decisive move. "Get me the White House tech team," she instructed her assistant. "We need to track Zara's phone's last GPS location." Within an hour, the team had pinpointed the final signal from Zara's device, Westfield Mall, specifically an upscale clothing store, before the signal disappeared entirely. The timestamp matched when Zara would have been shopping for her presentation outfit. Simultaneously, at the precinct, Zara was informed of her preliminary hearing scheduled for 11 a.m. A harried public defender with a stack of files tucked under, her arm spent exactly 3 minutes with her. "Shoplifting and resisting arrest," the attorney muttered, flipping through the incident report. "First offense?" "I didn't do anything," Zara insisted. "I'm a White House intern. This is all a mistake." "Dutitao." Defender barely looked up. "Save the explanations for later. Just plead not guilty and we'll sort it out." In a different part of the building, Officer Chen had made a decision. Using a burner phone purchased on her way to work, she called the number Zara had dialed the previous evening, the number that had appeared in the call log as Vanessa Johnson. "Mrs. Johnson, I can't identify myself, but I'm calling about your daughter, Zara." "Where is she?" Vanessa demanded, instantly alert despite her exhaustion. "5th Precinct, downtown D.C. Detained on shoplifting charges. Preliminary hearing at 11 a.m. today, Courtroom B, District Court." "Shoplifting? That's absurd. Is she all right?" "Physically, yes, but you should know the arresting officer has a history. And the captain here." Chen hesitated. "Just get here fast with proof of who she is." As Chen ended the call, the precinct erupted into unusual activity. Captain James Mercer, rarely seen before noon, strode through the doors with purpose. He headed straight for the holding cells, then pivoted toward his office, summoning Kruger with a sharp gesture. Behind closed blinds, the captain confronted Kruger. "You arrested a White House intern. Are you out of your mind?" Kruger's confident demeanor faltered. "What? No, that girl was lying. She had a fake ID or something." "The White House counsel's office just called me," Mercer hissed. "They're sending someone to discuss the situation. Do you have any idea what kind of scrutiny this could bring on this department?" The two men stared at each other, a moment of recognition passing between them. This wasn't about justice or truth. It was about damage control. "The footage clearly shows her concealing merchandise," Kruger insisted. "Does it?" Mercer asked pointedly. "Because if there's any doubt, any at all, we need to make this go away. Now." Their hushed conversation shifted to strategy. "Offer Zara a plea deal. No charges filed in exchange for signing an NDA about the unfortunate misunderstanding. If she refused, escalate pressure. Perhaps mention immigration investigations into extended family members, or resurrect old complaints against her mother's legal practice in Chicago." Meanwhile, across town, a college student who had witnessed Zara's arrest posted cell phone footage on social media. The video, capturing Kruger's aggression and Zara's clear statements about her identity, quickly gained traction with comments demanding investigation. By mid-morning, Dr. Lancaster had assembled the pieces. Armed with Zara's official credentials, security clearance documentation, and the authority of her White House position, she arrived at the 5th Precinct like an approaching storm. "I'm here for Zara Johnson," she announced to the desk sergeant, her voice carrying the weight of the executive branch behind it. "And I want to speak with whoever is responsible for her unlawful detention immediately." The sergeant's eyes widened as he took in Dr. Lancaster's credentials. He reached for his phone, his hand slightly trembling. "Captain, there's someone from the White House here about the Johnson girl." Inside his office, Captain Mercer cursed under his breath. He straightened his uniform and prepared his most diplomatic face. This was no longer about punishing a supposedly shoplifting teen. This was about preserving careers and preventing a departmental investigation. "We'll pin this entirely on Kruger if we have to," he muttered to himself. "One officer gone rogue, nothing systemic here. Do you believe there's one bad officer in this story, or a corrupt system that enables racial injustice? Comment number 1 if you think firing Kruger would solve the problem, or number 2 if you believe the entire precinct needs investigation. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see justice served in stories that reflect real struggles in our society. What will Dr. Lancaster discover when she confronts the police leadership? Will Zara be released immediately, or will the department try to cover their tracks? And what about the vital evidence that could exonerate her completely? Will it mysteriously disappear before justice can be served? The reunion happened in an interview room rather than a lobby, a final indignity suggesting Zara remained a suspect rather than a victim. When the door opened, Zara's composed facade finally cracked at the sight of her mother and Dr. Lancaster. Vanessa Johnson rushed forward, enveloping her daughter in a protective embrace while quickly examining her for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" she whispered, years of experience as a public defender having shown her the unrecorded violence that sometimes happened in precincts. "I'm okay, Mom," Zara assured her, though the shadows under her eyes and the remnants of dried tears told her, "Different story. They wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't even check my ID." Dr. Lancaster stood back, allowing the mother and daughter their moment while maintaining a professional demeanor that barely contained her fury. As special advisor to the president, she had witnessed political battles and international tensions, but seeing her brilliant young protege handcuffed and detained had awakened something fiercer. The door opened again, revealing Captain Mercer with a diplomatic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him lurked Officer Kruger, now uncharacteristically subdued. "Mrs. Johnson, Dr. Lancaster," Mercer began smoothly. "I want to personally apologize for this unfortunate situation. It appears there was a misunderstanding and we'll be dropping all charges immediately." "Misunderstanding?" Dr. Lancaster repeated, the word sharp as a blade. Our 17-year-old honor student with federal security clearance was detained for nearly 24 hours, without proper access to counsel or verification of her identity. "That's not a misunderstanding, Captain. That's a violation of her civil rights." Mercer's smile tightened. "We're prepared to make this right. If Miss Johnson would be willing to sign a standard release form, acknowledging that this was an unfortunate incident with no lasting harm." "A non-disclosure agreement," Vanessa interrupted, her legal training immediately identifying the document. Mercer was sliding across the table. "You want her to sign away her right to speak about what happened here or pursue any legal action?" "It's standard procedure for resolving these situations amicably," Mercer explained. "And what about Officer Kruger?" Dr. Lancaster demanded. "What standard procedure applies to him?" "Officer Kruger has been placed on administrative leave pending review," Mercer stated flatly. "With full pay," Vanessa noted, catching the careful wording. "While my daughter's reputation and mental well-being pay the actual price." Outside the precinct, a small group of reporters had gathered. News of a White House intern's wrongful detention had spread through journalist circles, amplified by the cell phone footage now circulating online. The story was developing the potential hallmarks of a national scandal. Back in the interview room, Zara found her voice. "I'm not signing anything," she stated firmly, surprising even her mother with her conviction. "What happened to me wasn't a misunderstanding. It was profiling, and it was wrong." Captain Mercer's diplomatic facade cracked slightly. "Miss Johnson, I strongly advise you to consider the department's generous offer. These matters can become complicated when they enter the public sphere." "Are you threatening my daughter?" Vanessa asked incredulously. "Not at all," Mercer backpedaled. "I'm simply suggesting that everyone's interests are best served by a quick, private resolution." As they gathered Zara's belongings, her phone still broken, her White House laptop now mysteriously missing a hard drive that police claimed was necessary for evidence, the three women walked out of the precinct into the harsh glare of camera, lights and shouted questions from journalists. That evening, as Zara tried to settle into the hotel room her mother had booked, her phone began buzzing with notifications despite its cracked screen. The video of her arrest had gone viral. Comments flooded in, some supportive, others attacking her character with vicious racial stereotypes. Then the first anonymous message arrived on her social media. "You should have kept your mouth shut. Cops protect their own. Watch your back." Within hours, similar messages appeared, some veiled threats, others explicit descriptions of violence. When Vanessa called the precinct to report the harassment, the desk sergeant took minimal notes and offered a dismissive, "The internet is full of trolls. Nothing we can do." The next morning, a conservative news outlet published a segment questioning Zara's character, featuring a yearbook photo and out-of-context social media posts. "White House intern or radical activist?" the headline blared, alongside an unflattering image. The reporter suggested that sources close to the investigation had revealed concerning information about Zara's background. When Zara checked her school email, she discovered someone had leaked a minor disciplinary incident from 9th grade, when she had received detention for organizing a protest against a teacher's racially insensitive remarks. The once sealed minor infraction was now being portrayed as evidence of a history of confrontations with authority. As Dr. Lancaster arrived at their hotel for a security briefing, she brought concerning news. "The White House is supportive, but cautious," she explained carefully. "Since you're representing the administration through your internship, there are considerations about how to proceed." "They want me to stay quiet," Zara translated. "They want to support you in a way that doesn't create additional complications," Dr. Lancaster corrected diplomatically. "This isn't just about one officer anymore. The police union has issued a statement defending Kruger's actions as procedure compliant and questioning the special treatment you're receiving due to your connections." Outside their hotel, a patrol car drove by slowly, then circled back for a second pass. When Vanessa went to pick up food from a nearby restaurant, another police cruiser followed her the entire way. The message was clear. Zara might have been released, but the system she had challenged was vast, connected, and now fully mobilized against her. The Metropolitan Police Union's press conference marked a significant escalation. Standing on the precinct steps with dozens of uniformed officers behind him, Union President Michael Farley addressed the assembled media with righteous indignation. "Officer, Richard Kruger is a decorated 15-year veteran with an exemplary record of service to this community," Farley declared, conveniently omitting the multiple civilian complaints. "He followed proper procedure when confronted with a suspicious individual who matched the description of recent shoplifting incidents. The suggestion that race played any role in this professional police action is not only false, but damaging to public safety." The statement directly contradicted the mall video footage, but that didn't stop 3 cable news commentators from running with the narrative that evening. "What we're seeing is the White House privilege card being played," said a pundit on National News Network. "When celebrities or politically connected individuals encounter normal law enforcement, they expect special treatment unavailable to everyday Americans." Another show took a different approach, digging through Zara's social media with surgical precision. They found a post from 2 years earlier when she had shared an article about police reform. "This intern has a history of anti-police sentiment," the host suggested ominously. "Makes you wonder if she was looking for a confrontation." In her hotel room, Zara watched in disbelief as strangers dissected and distorted her life on national television. The narrative was shifting before her eyes, from wrongful detention to questionable character. "This is how it works," her mother explained grimly. "They're turning you from victim to aggressor. Classic playbook." The digital attacks intensified when someone leaked Zara's disciplinary record from her Chicago high school. The infraction was minor, organizing a student walkout after a teacher had used a racial slur during a literature discussion. But conservative media transformed it into a pattern of disruptive behavior and authority challenges. White House. Officials grew increasingly nervous about the association. That afternoon, Dr. Lancaster received a call from the Chief of Staff. "The administration supports justice, of course," she reported to Zara afterward, choosing her words carefully. "But they're concerned about the political dimensions this is taking on. They're suggesting that pursuing this while actively representing The White House internship program might create conflicts. The implied message was clear: drop the case or drop the internship. The intimidation tactics escalated beyond media attacks. Patrol cars became a constant presence outside their temporary D.C. residence, officers visibly taking photos of visitors. When Vanessa stepped out for coffee one morning, an officer stopped her for a random license check that lasted 45 minutes. The district attorney's office, initially responsive to their complaints, suddenly became difficult to reach. Scheduled meetings were cancelled at the last minute. The prosecutor assigned to review Kruger's conduct was reassigned to another department without explanation. Through persistent research and public records requests, Zara discovered that Captain Mercer and Officer Kruger shared more than a workplace. They had attended the police academy together. Mercer had been best man at Kruger's wedding, and they co-owned a fishing cabin in Virginia. Every complaint ever filed against Kruger had crossed Mercer's desk before being dismissed. Social media became a battleground of its own. A coordinated campaign of accounts with American flag avatars and Blue Lives Matter in their profiles flooded Zara's mentions with accusations and attacks, many featuring the same specific phrases about her being an angry black radical pushing a divisive agenda. The most chilling development came when Zara's mother received a call from Chicago. Officers had been seen parked outside their home, questioning neighbors about the Johnson family. A cousin who had a minor traffic violation suddenly found himself arrested for an outstanding warrant no one knew existed. "They're sending a message," Vanessa explained to her increasingly anxious daughter. "This is bigger than Kruger now. This is the system protecting itself." The pressure was designed to break them, to force a retreat and quiet settlement. Each new attack made the same implicit offer: drop this, sign the NDA, and the harassment will stop. Continue and watch it intensify. What would you do if faced with such overwhelming pressure from powerful institutions? Comment number 1 if you believe Zara should stand firm despite the escalating threats, or number 2 if you think she should protect herself and her family by accepting the settlement. Hit that subscribe button if you believe that justice must prevail even when the system fights back. Can one teenager really stand against an entire police department and its allies? What happens when those with power use every resource to silence the truth? And what about the other victims of this department who didn't have White House credentials? Will their stories ever come to light? The turning point came unexpectedly. In a coffee shop 3 blocks from their hotel, Zara sat alone at a corner table, laptop open as she worked on a statement for a planned press conference, when a stranger slid into the seat across from her. "Don't react visibly," the woman said quietly. "My name is Benjamin Morris. I'm a civil rights attorney with the Justice Coalition, and I believe I can help you." Zara maintained her composure, though her pulse quickened. "How did you find me?" "The mall." "Footage wasn't the only video," Morris explained. "I represent 3 other individuals who've had similar encounters with Officer Kruger and the 5th Precinct, all black or brown, all falsely accused, all pressured to sign NDAs. Morris slid a business card across the table. "I've been building our case for months, but your situation provides the breakthrough we need. Your White House position means they can't bury this as easily." By that evening, Zara and her mother sat in Morris's office, reviewing files that painted a disturbing pattern. Marcus Williams, a black college student detained for matching a suspect description, despite being 6 inches shorter. Elena Diaz, a Latina small business owner, arrested for suspicious behavior while making a night deposit at her own bank. Trevor Jackson, a 16-year-old honor student, handcuffed in front of his school for trespassing while waiting for his mother after basketball practice. "Kruger is the most visible perpetrator, but he's protected by a system," Morris explained. "Same judge signing off on flimsy warrants. Same prosecutor declining to pursue misconduct charges. Same captain burying complaints." As they strategized, Zara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Security office, loading dock entrance, midnight. Come alone. Evidence you need. C. Officer Chen," Zara realized. "The one who helped me at the precinct." Morris looked concerned. "It could be a trap. Or it could be the whistleblower we need," Vanessa countered. They devised a cautious approach. Morris would wait in a car nearby. Vanessa would monitor from a distance. Zara would wear a recording device. That night, in the shadowy loading dock area behind the precinct, Officer Chen appeared in civilian clothes, clutching a USB drive. "I was going to anonymously mail this," she explained nervously, "but I was afraid it would get intercepted. What's happening to you happened to others, and the department buried it every time. This drive contains internal communications, unedited footage, and disciplinary records that were supposed to be deleted." "Why are you risking your career?" Zara asked. Chen looked away. "My younger brother was beaten by police in Los Angeles last year. No one with a badge helped him. I can't be that person anymore." The documents proved explosive. Internal emails showed Captain Mercer explicitly instructing officers to focus enforcement on demographic patterns consistent with recent offenses, a thinly veiled directive for racial profiling. There were records of 17 complaints against Kruger in 3 years, all dismissed without investigation. Most damning was an unedited copy of the mall security footage showing Zara had never concealed any merchandise. Meanwhile, independent journalist Sofia Martinez had been building her own investigation. Through public records requests and interviews with former precinct employees, she uncovered a pattern of minority officers being sidelined after questioning departmental practices. "This isn't about one bad officer," Martinez explained when she met with Zara and Morris. "It's about systemic practices designed to produce exactly these outcomes." As they compiled evidence, support began to grow. Civil rights organizations issued statements backing Zara. Legal aid groups offered assistance. Former victims of the precinct's profiling reached out with their stories, but as their coalition strengthened, so did the opposition's tactics. The mall security footage that Chen had recovered suddenly became corrupted in the official evidence files. Officer Kruger filed a countersuit claiming defamation and emotional distress, backed by the full resources of the police union's legal team. White House officials maintained their awkward position. Privately, several senior staff members expressed support to Dr. Lancaster, but publicly the administration limited its comments to bland statements about the importance of proper procedure for all parties. The growing movement organized a town hall meeting at a community center to discuss police accountability. As Zara took the stage to share her experience, a coordinated group of police supporters entered, wearing matching T-shirts with Kruger's badge number. They interrupted with chants and accusations, forcing the meeting to end early. When Zara returned to her mother's car afterward, she found the windows smashed and racial slurs spray-painted across the doors. The police officers who responded took over an hour to arrive and filed a report listing it as random vandalism, despite the targeted nature of the attack. That evening, Morris received an anonymous tip about Kruger's online activities. Through careful investigation, they discovered his membership in a private social media group where officers shared racist memes, coached each other on how to write reports that justified force, and coordinated harassment campaigns against complainants. The evidence was mounting, but so were the stakes. Each new revelation was met with escalating intimidation. Yet for the first time since her detention, Zara felt something beyond anger and fear. With allies beside her, the impossible fight seemed potentially winnable. They're used to isolated individuals who can be pressured into silence, Morris told her. They don't know how to handle a movement that refuses to back down. As they prepared their next steps, Zara received an unexpected call from Dr. Lancaster. "The president wants to discuss your situation," she said simply. "Tomorrow morning." The Department of Justice announcement came without warning, sending shockwaves through the 5th Precinct and beyond. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Elena Vasquez, stood before a forest of microphones in Washington, D.C. Today, the Department of Justice is opening a formal pattern or practice investigation into the Metropolitan Police Department's 5th Precinct, following substantial allegations of civil rights violations and discriminatory enforcement practices, she stated. This investigation will be thorough, independent, and guided only by the facts and the law. The investigation represented a seismic shift in the power dynamics. No longer was Zara Johnson a lone teenager against a police department. Now the full investigative authority of the federal government had entered the equation. Within the precinct, panic spread rapidly. Officers who had remained silent suddenly worried about their own complicity. Administrative assistants who had processed questionable paperwork wondered about their legal exposure. And in his office, Captain Mercer made a fateful decision that would ultimately seal his fate. "I need every officer to review their body cam footage and reports from the past 6 months," he instructed at an emergency staff meeting. "Any incidents involving minority subjects need special attention. Clean up anything that could be misinterpreted." Unknown to Mercer, his instructions were being recorded by Officer Chen, who had positioned her phone carefully before the meeting began. The recording, immediately forwarded to Benjamin Morris, provided critical evidence of obstruction. The grand jury proceedings began quietly, with witnesses entering the federal courthouse through side entrances to avoid media attention. Zara's testimony lasted nearly 6 hours, as she meticulously recounted every detail of her detention, the subsequent intimidation, and the repeated attempts to silence her. "Did Officer Kruger at any point acknowledge your White House credentials or attempt to verify your identity?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Zara replied. "He dismissed my ID as fake without even examining it closely. When I mentioned Dr. Lancaster's name as someone who could confirm my position, he laughed and said I probably got the name from reading a newspaper." The testimony of Kruger's previous victims proved equally powerful. Marcus Williams described being held for 9 hours for matching a suspect description of someone 6 inches shorter. Elena Diaz recounted being arrested while making a night deposit at her own business, with officers claiming she looked suspicious. Trevor Jackson explained how being handcuffed outside his school had affected his mental health and academic performance. A pattern emerged through their testimonies, not of occasional mistakes, but of systematic targeting based on race. Officer Chen's decision to come forward publicly marked another turning point. Despite threats from fellow officers and the knowledge that her police career was effectively over, she provided internal documents showing how complaints against Kruger had been systematically buried. Captain Mercer established an unofficial policy, she testified. Complaints from certain neighborhoods or with certain demographic patterns were automatically routed for administrative closure without investigation. While the grand jury proceeded, Kruger's behavior grew increasingly erratic. Journalists observed him approaching potential witnesses, his body language suggesting intimidation rather than conversation. When confronted by a reporter about these approaches, Kruger snapped, "I'm just making sure people remember things accurately." The investigation suffered a significant setback when Benjamin Morris's office was broken into overnight. Case files were stolen, computers smashed, and a crude threat painted on the wall. The police officers who responded took statements but showed little urgency in pursuing the case. "Probably just random vandals," the responding officer suggested, despite the targeted nature of the break-in. "This neighborhood has seen a spike in property crimes lately." The danger escalated further when Zara received a handwritten note under her hotel room door. The message, composed of letters cut from magazines, detailed her daily routine with disturbing accuracy: the coffee shop she visited each morning, the time she usually returned to the hotel, even the side entrance she had been using to avoid media attention. "We're always watching," the note concluded. "One accident is all it takes." The threat's specificity suggested access to surveillance capabilities beyond those of ordinary citizens. When Morris filed a police report, the officer taking the statement asked, "Are you sure this isn't just a prank from someone who saw her on the news?" Despite these obstacles, the investigation gained momentum as media coverage expanded nationally. What had begun as a local incident was now framed as a test case for police accountability across the country. Editorial boards called for transparency. Civil rights organizations held rallies supporting Zara and other victims. Social media campaigns demanded justice for Zara. The pressure finally prompted a response from the White House, which until then had maintained an uncomfortable distance from the controversy involving their intern. The press secretary read a carefully worded statement. The President supports a full and fair investigation into allegations of misconduct and emphasizes that all Americans deserve equal treatment under the law, regardless of their race, background, or position. Behind the scenes, Dr. Lancaster explained the statement's significance to Zara. This is as strong as it gets without prejudging an ongoing investigation. The President is sending a clear message to the Department of Justice that this case matters. As the grand jury neared its conclusion, federal investigators uncovered a trove of deleted text messages between Captain Mercer and Officer Kruger, revealing coordination on everything from evidence tampering to witness intimidation. The technological breakthrough provided the final pieces needed to understand the full scope of the corruption. The indictments, when they came, exceeded even Morris's expectations in their breadth and detail. The case had transformed from the wrongful detention of one teenage intern into an exposé of systematic civil rights violations that had affected hundreds of lives. The courtroom hushed as Judge Eleanor Washington entered. The proceedings today would determine whether Officer Richard Kruger would face criminal charges for his actions against Zara Johnson and the subsequent attempted cover-up. Every seat was filled, with journalists and legal observers standing along the back wall. Kruger sat beside his attorney, his uniform pressed and decorated with commendations, a deliberate image of authority and respectability. He projected confidence, occasionally offering reassuring nods to the row of uniformed officers who had come to support him. When Zara entered with her mother and Benjamin Morris, she felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Gone was the frightened teenager from the holding cell. In her place stood a composed young woman in a tailored navy suit, her chin raised despite the gravity of the moment. Kruger's testimony came first, delivered with the practiced assurance of someone who had testified in court dozens of times before. I observed the subject examining merchandise in a manner consistent with known shoplifting behaviors, he stated. When approached, she became confrontational and refused to cooperate with basic requests. At no point did she present credible identification. His attorney guided him through a narrative that portrayed Zara as belligerent and uncooperative, a teenager playing the race card when caught breaking the law. The strategy was clear: undermine Zara's credibility and paint Kruger as an officer, simply following procedure. Officer Kruger, did race play any role in your decision to detain Miss Johnson? His attorney asked. Absolutely not, Kruger replied with rehearsed indignation. I would have responded exactly the same way to any individual exhibiting those behaviors, regardless of race. During cross-examination, Benjamin Morris methodically dismantled Kruger's account, highlighting inconsistencies between his testimony and the written report, then between the report and available evidence. Officer Kruger, you testified that Ms. Johnson became immediately confrontational when approached, yet 3 independent witnesses stated she remained calm and offered to empty her pockets. Why the discrepancy? Kruger shifted uncomfortably. Witnesses often misremember details in stressful situations, and the security footage that shows her calmly speaking to you before you grabbed her arm. Is that also misremembering? The angle of that footage doesn't show her full body language, Kruger countered. As Morris continued, Kruger's confident facade began to crack. When pressed about his failure to check Zara's identification, he claimed, shoplifters often carry fake IDs. I assumed hers was another attempt to evade consequences. So you assumed, Morris repeated. So you assumed her White House ID was fake without even examining it closely. Just as you assumed she was shoplifting without evidence. Just as you assumed she wouldn't have connections powerful enough to challenge your authority. When Zara took the stand, the contrast was striking. Where Kruger had been defensive and increasingly agitated, she remained composed, her testimony precise and measured. She described the events exactly as they had occurred, without embellishment or emotional flourishes. Then came the pivotal moment. Kruger's attorney, attempting to undermine her credibility, suggested that the White House ID she claimed to have shown could have been forged or obtained through deceptive means. Ms. Johnson, you expect this court to believe that a 17-year-old from Chicago somehow secured a White House position typically reserved for Ivy League graduates? The attorney asked condescendingly. "I don't expect you to believe anything without evidence," Zara replied calmly. She reached into her bag and produced her White House credentials with the presidential seal clearly visible. "These can be verified in real time by White House security. Would you like to call them now?" A murmur spread through the courtroom. Judge Washington examined the ID carefully before handing it to the clerk. "The court will verify these credentials immediately." Within minutes, confirmation arrived from White House security. Zara Johnson was indeed a properly credentialed intern with the Future Leaders Initiative, with a security clearance that had been active on the day of her detention. The revelation visibly shook Kruger. His face, previously composed, now showed the first signs of genuine fear as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. Morris pressed the advantage, introducing additional evidence that had emerged during the investigation. Officer Chen's testimony about the precinct's pattern of discrimination, the recovered mall footage showing Zara had never concealed any merchandise, and transcripts of Kruger's comments in the private police social media group. During redirect questioning, Kruger lost the composure he had maintained throughout the proceedings. When Morris presented evidence that Kruger had approached and threatened witnesses, his response veered into territory his own attorney hadn't anticipated. "How you people always stick together," he snapped, the racial undertone unmistakable. "Always claiming special treatment when the rules apply to you." The courtroom fell silent at the outburst. Judge Washington's expression hardened as she made notes. On the pad before her, by the hearing's conclusion, Judge Washington's decision was decisive. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds sufficient cause to suspend Officer Kruger effective immediately and recommends criminal charges for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and witness intimidation. As the courtroom began to clear, Kruger disappeared through a side door. Unknown to others, he made his way to the parking garage where he knew Zara would eventually pass. Having lost his career, his reputation, and potentially his freedom, Kruger had nothing left to lose, a dangerous state for a man accustomed to power. When Zara entered the dimly lit garage level with her mother and Morris, Kruger stepped from behind a concrete pillar, blocking their path to the car. "You think this is over?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the enclosed space. "You've destroyed everything I built over 20 years. You think I'm just going to accept that?" Benjamin Morris stepped protectively in front of Zara and Vanessa. "Officer Kruger, I strongly advise you to leave immediately. This could be construed as witness intimidation, another charge you don't need." "I don't care about charges anymore," Kruger replied, his hand drifting toward his waistband. "Some things matter more than consequences." The tense standoff broke when security officers, alerted by unusual activity on the garage cameras, arrived, with weapons drawn. Kruger, realizing he was now outnumbered, raised his hands slowly. His final attempt at intimidation, like his career, ended not with the bang he might have intended, but with the quiet click of handcuffs around his wrists. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, Zara Johnson stood at a podium in the White House Rose Garden. Behind her sat the president, cabinet members, congressional leaders, and dozens of community activists who had fought for police reform. For decades, her mother and Dr. Lancaster watched from the front row, pride evident in their expressions. "Today we witness more than the signing of legislation," Zara began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd and to millions watching the televised ceremony. "We acknowledge that systems can change when brave individuals refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. The journey to this moment had been neither straight nor simple. Following Kruger's arrest in the parking garage, the case had expanded dramatically. Captain Mercer and 4 additional officers were indicted for obstruction of justice and civil rights violations. An external audit of the 5th Precinct revealed a pattern of discriminatory enforcement affecting predominantly minority neighborhoods. The GI precinct had been placed under federal oversight, with mandatory reforms including new training protocols, community accountability measures, and leadership changes. Body camera requirements were strengthened, with automatic penalties for deactivated or malfunctioning equipment during civilian encounters. Zara's role had evolved as well. What began as a traumatic detention had transformed her into an unexpected spokesperson for reform. The White House, recognizing both her brilliance and her first-hand experience, elevated her to an advisory position with the newly formed Commission on Criminal Justice Reform. Her testimony before Congress had provided powerful support for the Johnson Act, comprehensive legislation addressing police accountability nationwide. The law established a mandatory national database tracking officer misconduct across jurisdictions, preventing problem officers from simply moving to new departments after misconduct. What happened to me was not unique, Zara continued in her address. What was unique was that I had resources and connections many victims don't possess. For every case that makes headlines, countless others remain invisible, their stories untold, their justice denied. The police union had fought the reforms vigorously, marshalling political allies and media contacts to portray the changes as dangerous constraints on law enforcement. But public opinion had shifted decisively as more evidence emerged about the systemic nature of the problems. When multiple officers came forward with their own accounts of institutional pressure to engage in discriminatory practices, the narrative became impossible to dismiss. In Chicago, Zara's plans had changed too. Harvard still waited, but her intended major had shifted from policy analysis to law, with a focus on civil rights. Some lessons can't be taught in classrooms, she explained in interviews. Some knowledge can only come from lived experience. The most powerful symbol of transformation was perhaps the memorial established in a park near the 5th Precinct. A simple granite wall inscribed with the names of individuals who had suffered documented misconduct but never received justice. Many had died before their stories could be fully told. Others had accepted settlements that purchased their silence. Together, their names formed a powerful testament to the human cost of systemic failure. Officer Chen, whose whistleblowing had provided crucial evidence, found a new career training police departments on bias recognition and prevention. Though she could never return to policing, her expertise proved valuable in helping reform-minded departments identify and address problematic patterns before they became entrenched. On the day of the bill signing, Zara made a surprising visit to the Federal Detention Center, where Richard Kruger awaited trial. Their conversation, conducted through glass and monitored by corrections officers, lasted only 15 minutes. "I didn't come for an apology," Zara told him when he asked why she had requested the meeting. "I came to thank you." Kruger's expression registered confusion. "You taught me something no classroom could," she continued. "You showed me exactly how systems fail, and in doing so you revealed how they might be fixed. What happened that day at the mall was terrible, but what's emerged from it may help thousands of others avoid similar experiences." As she gathered her belongings to leave, Kruger finally spoke. "You know nothing's really going to change, right? They'll rename things, shuffle some papers, but underneath it'll be the same as always." Zara studied him for a moment. "That's the difference between us, Officer Kruger. You stopped believing things can improve. I never will." Later that afternoon, as the President signed the Johnson Act into law, Zara stood as living proof that a system designed to silence could instead become a catalyst for transformation. The journey from detained teenager to agent of change had been painful and filled with obstacles, but its impact would ripple through institutions and communities for generations to come. In her final address at the White House internship graduation ceremony, Zara Johnson shared the lesson that would define her path forward. Justice isn't something that simply exists in the world waiting to be discovered. It's something we must actively create every day through our choices and our courage. The systems we inherit are not our destiny, they're our responsibility. The 17-year-old who had entered a mall looking for a blazer had emerged as a powerful voice for institutional change, proving that sometimes the most significant transformations begin with a single moment of injustice finally exposed to light. Zara Johnson's journey illuminates powerful truths about justice and systemic change. First, it reveals how institutions often protect themselves rather than those they claim to serve, creating cycles of injustice that particularly impact marginalized communities. When accountability threatens established power, the response is typically not correction but concealment. Second, the story demonstrates that individual courage remains essential for systemic transformation. Zara's refusal to accept injustice Officer Chen's decision to become a whistleblower, and Attorney Morris's commitment to representing victims all show how personal choices can disrupt entrenched patterns of abuse. Third, we see that privilege matters in achieving justice. Zara's White House credentials provided leverage that most victims of racial profiling lack. This uncomfortable reality highlights why those with power must use their advantages to create more equitable systems for everyone. Fourth, real change requires collective action. While Zara's case was the catalyst, the broader transformation depended on a coalition of voices, other victims sharing their stories, journalists investigating patterns, and officials willing to challenge the status quo. Individual cases rarely change systems. Movements do. Finally, the story teaches us that accountability without transformation is incomplete justice. Punishing Officer Kruger addressed one symptom, but not the underlying disease. True justice required reforming the policies, practices, and culture that enabled his behavior. These lessons remind us that justice is not an automatic function of our institutions, but a continuous process requiring vigilance, courage, and commitment. We must recognize injustice, stand with its victims, and work together to transform the systems that perpetuate it, not just for high-profile cases, but for everyone. Has racial profiling or discrimination touched your life or the lives of those you care about? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story matters and adds to the important conversation this narrative begins. If Zara's courage inspired you, hit that subscribe button to support more content that shines light on uncomfortable truths and pathways to justice. Have you witnessed instances where speaking truth to power created meaningful change? Let us know with a comment. Thank you for joining me in exploring these critical issues that affect so many Americans every day. Remember, justice isn't just a concept. It's something we actively create through our collective choices and courage.